Welcome to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work Live A Guy podcast. Today, I am joined by the phenomenal Dre Bennin, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, managing partner at NewU Venture Partners. And we're going to be talking about his background, his story, as well as how he got into private equity investing and his thoughts on the future of education. I'm really excited about it because Dre has a really interesting story and background. So if you're tuning in from Oakland, shout out to Oakland. That is where I am currently broadcasting from. So shout out to all of my people in Oakland right now. Please comment if you're tuning in from the UK. If you're tuning in from anywhere in the United States, let us know. We would love to shout you out. I'm really excited about today's episode. And with that said, let me bring on Dre. What's good, brother?
Hey, how you doing, Tim? Glad
How's
to
it
be
going,
on.
man?
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you, man. What's going on in your world, man?
So we're here in Salt Lake City, and the past couple of weeks have been kind of tumultuous, but at the same time, like we're definitely blessed to be here. Family's good, and work is good, so can't complain. Super blessed.
Good, man. Shout out to you. So share a little bit more about how long you've been living in Salt Lake City and, how did you get into doing the work that you do?
Yeah, it's like in life, like my philosophy is to be nimble, and arriving here in Salt Lake City. So we've been here since December 30th. I joined NewU Venture Partners on December 31st, and we've been at it, really trying to execute on the strategy since then. Um, my path to here, maybe, and you and I we had a conversation. So you know my background, but for the audience here, so I was actually born in Ivory Coast to two Ghanaian parents, and my mom, she immigrated to the United States with myself and my older brother. And for her, just having a high school diploma, her main thing like, her main thing that she wanted to impart to her children were the importance of education. So at a very young age, like we were in the books, and she reinforced that in our mind, and I'll say 15 somewhat years later, or 20 years later, like both my older brother and myself, like we both went on to get our undergrad degrees at Brigham Young, and also our JD's Jewish doctorate degree from Brigham Young as well. And my brother, he's practicing law. He went back to private practice, and I'm managing a fund that I'm with a thesis that I'm super passionate about. So um, in terms of like getting here to New Venture Partners, um, after law school, I spent time not only in the legal world. So I worked for a judge in Delaware at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, and then I worked on K Street for a little while doing government relations, and then it was there that I met the CEO of USA Funds, now Strata Education Network, and it was interesting because like I did a little bit of work for him, and we became close friends, and ultimately he became one of my closest mentors. Like till this day, I still ping him for advice. Um, as I was leaving the firm, he was interviewing for CEO jobs, and uh, luckily he pinged me. I was on Capitol Hill working for on the Judiciary Committee, and he said, "Hey, I got this job as CEO of this interesting organization. It's kind of like the organization is kind of shifting strategy a little bit, but traditionally it was a guarantor in the student loan business." And I'm like, "All right, sounds good. Whenever you're ready, just let me know." And sure enough, he pinged me and said, "Hey, got the job. You should move out to Indianapolis with me." And that was his first hire. The rest was history. Spent the first 9 months on the job with him, uh, really working on strategy work, trying to reposition the company from a legacy business to what it is today, which is a 501c3 public charity, really focused on completion with a purpose, and so essentially helping learners gain access to meaningful career pathways. And for me, um, I really hit the ground running. Like I would say about 60% of my time was spent in corporate development, so doing um, really establishing like the strategy that we have now in terms of like direct investing and like taking minority positions in companies, doing control investments and buyouts, and then also fund investments so we can get a better understanding and lay of the land in terms of landscape and in education investing. And then 40% of my time at Strata was spent in operations, given I was the CEO's right-hand person. Took a year break. I worked in state government against my
Wow.
better judgment.
So let me ask you, because it seems like throughout your career you've had this common thread of really being passionate about education, and similar to you, I'm a Niger boy,
That's right.
from the motherland. So it's very similar in terms of my parents. We came to the United States literally. We won the lottery ticket, man.
Yeah.
And that's how my parents came to the United States, and it was just so they can give us access to a better education. And that's always been my motif and like drive to always be able to outsmart the competition. Right. And if not outsmart the competition, out hustle the competition. Right.
That's right.
For you, working in, private equity is so large, it's such a massive place. How did your education, your self-motivation really lead you to always being able to pivot into different fields within the space?
So like my education is very uncommon in this space that I'm in. So I have my undergrad was in molecular biology,
Yeah.
and then my law
Which is
degree.
super random.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just put this out. I was pre-med at one point, and then at one point I wanted to get my PhD in
Wow.
molecular biology and focus on HIV research. I did some of that like randomly when I was in law school, but ultimately like I landed in the path that I am now. But so the education that I received from my molecular biology to my law degree were really foundation points for the way that I approach problems and critical thinking. So that's really like that training was really what allowed me to make these different pivots, because like I had like the foundation in terms of critical thinking, and then like in terms of law school, like thinking like a lawyer is one thing, like practicing is another thing, and I'd say like having that foundation in terms of like thinking like a lawyer was extremely useful in all the pivots that I made in my career.
Yeah. At what moment, did you realize, okay, I want to be a managing partner. I want to be someone that invests in great entrepreneurs who are building world-changing companies. What was the allure that drove you to doing that work?
So it was really my time at Strata. So getting to Strata, like we started like our strategy in corporate development initially was investing in funds. So we invested, now say, in like most of the education funds that are in the market today, and from there, like we not only learned a couple of things. So we learned, number one, uh, like how like proper investments are made, like how to make proper investment decisions. Then two, we were getting access to like some serious deal flow, and as a result of that, like we were able to like either place our own bets in these companies, but also like acquire them if it makes sense. So in that process, like being able to like get ingrained in diligence and learning more about these business models from these different founders, and also getting a chance to interact with these founders, like I gained a passion to really like roll up my sleeve and help these founders that we were investing in. For me, like my philosophy at Strata, and I argue that it's the same philosophy for the team there that's still there. Like we don't want to be just dumb money on the cap table. Like we really want to leverage our resources, roll up our sleeves alongside the founders, leverage our resources, and be like a long-term, like not only capital partner for these businesses, but also be a long-term like strategic partner in terms of like giving them access to our networks, like giving them access to resources that are at our fingertips, research, etc. So we want to, like our position at Strata was, hey, if we're investing in your company, we're in it for the long run, and we want to be like good thought partners and good partners in general to you and your company.
It's more than just the capital.
Exactly. Absolutely.
It's a relationship.
It can be just the capital. I mean, if it's just the capital, then you're just like it's just not fair to the founders. Like you're just putting money in and you're just taking the seat back. All right, go perform and go scale. Like there's no fun in doing that. Like it's more fun like really like having conversation with the founders if they need help, like making yourself accessible. making yourself available to them. Like all my founders, like they have my cell phone numbers and they know open door policy. You need me, you ping me.
Let me know if you're in trouble.
Yeah, not even in trouble. Like if you need a chat or whatever, just ping me. I'm here to help.
Wow.
Like that's always my position and my approach with investing and most importantly with working with founders.
Yeah. So let me talk to you, man, because there's right now with everything going on around the Black Lives Matter movement and this focus on diversity, not only in technology, but also in the private equity space. There's a huge conversation on making the private equity landscape accessible for Black investors, people of color and whatnot. Do you have any thoughts on that? Being someone that, that's been in this field for quite some time.
Yeah, so honestly, like my so the events of the past couple of weeks have really like brought a light brought to the forefront of our minds like a lot of the issues and complexities that are happening around racism and inequality, race and equality in the nation. So um, it's not only on a social level, it's on there are multiple tiers to this issue, and it's interesting because as you look at the PE landscape, and if you even like do a couple of clicks down to the main like private equity, like the venture capital asset class, right? It's there are not a lot of like Black general partners, let alone like Black managing partners, let alone like investors in the space that are of color, and that not only reflects on the firm, but also reflects on the investment decisions that are made. So if they're not people that are representative of a certain population on the IC on the investment committee, then sometimes like it's hard to make those decisions in terms of investing in founders of color, and you can see that like throughout the entire like VC landscape. There are not a lot of Black founders or founders of color that are funded. So
Yeah.
that being said, like with everything that's been happening, I'm a strong believer in lifting where you stand and then creating a model that could then scale. Like a good friend of mine from undergrad, like we've been thinking about, hey, like what can we do to like we're more solutions driven. Uh, like you can put your policy hat on, you can put your legal hat on, but at the same time, like those are things that are it's like a longer term play.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, like even like my belief is affecting the future generations. So like how about like targeting like like Black kids as early as elementary school and giving them exposure to the financial services industry?
Mm.
Like I think that's critical. I think that's something that can easily be done, and that's something that I mean in the state of Utah, there are not a lot of like Black students, right? So like my plan with my buddy is to really trying to source out these Black students and get them exposure to the financial services industry, so that at a very young age, like they understand like financial literacy, to like even what a venture capitalist does,
Yeah.
like
What cash flow is?
yeah,
How do you stay liquid? All of these things, man.
yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like I laugh about it because, like, even when I was like in elementary school and in high school, I literally I didn't even know like the intricacies
Mm.
of the financial services industry, like the different occupations. Like, I didn't know about venture capital. I didn't know about private equity. Uh, like, I knew a little bit about investment banking, but that was about it.
Yeah.
So, to the extent that we can get these kids like exposure to the industry, I think it will be critical in shaping the future.
Yeah. And I think it starts at that age too, right? In terms of creating pathways, exposure, and
Yeah,
because the reality is that there's no more knowledge gaps. I mean, every information is out there, right? But
yeah,
the role modeling, that's what's often missing, especially in communities of color. There are no role models. It's hard to find the role models that can really create those pathways. And I think that's really where there's a huge opportunity that lies early career in high school. And I say that for someone that was in high school. I had no idea what a product manager was, or what, or how to build
yeah.
software.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
But I learned over
yeah.
time, and it's been crazy, and it's been a huge part of my life. But that role modeling is so important when you're early in age.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can't understate the importance of having mentors,
Yeah.
and not like passive mentors, but mentors that really care and that you can pick up the phone and like they'll answer the call and like
Yeah.
and give you advice. Like it's like for me, like again, mentorship has been like tremendously important in my life and in my career, and especially in these times, I think it's important. It's incumbent upon us.
Mm,
For you, you have a platform. You can raise your voice. For me, I'm lucky enough to be in the position that I'm in. So my the plan or the hope is to help like pave the way for those behind me.
yeah.
It's important.
Yeah, yeah. I love it, man. So I want you to share a little bit more about some of the companies that you've worked with that are in your portfolio and that you've advised, and some of the rock star entrepreneurs in the past that you've invested in, and just continue to support.
So I'll give you a couple. So one main one, and it was more of a turnaround story, and this is extremely like one of the most successful turnaround stories in terms of company that we invested in, and it went through a couple of different CEOs, but the last CEO that came on board really turned things around, and the company is now. Um, the company got acquired by a large PE shop.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and for the company itself, like essentially the business model is providing uh, like like diploma to students, um, and the company is called Graduation Alliance, and it's been around for a little while, and they've gone through some like a couple of pivots, and again the last pivot was the most successful one, and they've been able to grow the company. Uh, Cash flow positive, which is typically in this space and in that tech, like there are very few companies that are actually cash flow positive. Um, so that's one that graduation alliance is one that I really enjoy working with. Um, Currently in our current portfolio, and I'm kind of biased about this about this company. So maybe I'll give you two founders that I really like in their company. So one is Kenzie Academy.
Oh yes.
Um, so Kenzie is actually a software engineering training and also UX design training company based out of the Midwest. And for me, like I got to know Chuck uh, when I was in the governor's office at the time, and
Wow.
like one of like I'll say the one of the most prominent name in that tech. I've been lucky to know for a while, and that's Deborah Quazzo, and she made the introduction to Chuck when I was in the governor's office, and um, I met Chuck. We had him inside the gov's office, and like after meeting, I was like, yeah, this guy's the real deal. Like he's a good founder,
Mm.
and we did everything that we could, like from like in the gov's office to lay out the groundwork of the foundation for him to establish Kenzie Academy in the state of Indiana, specifically in Indianapolis. And like till this day, like I still like Chuck and I like we still like keep in touch. In fact, we invested in them when we were at Strata. When I came over to you venture partners, we made an investment in them. So it's one of those
It's a
like
relationship.
I strongly believe in Chuck and his team, and I think they're doing great things, and they're like I'll say there are no. I don't have any favorites in my portfolio. I love all of my founders the same, but I love Chuck. I haven't worked with him for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, the other entrepreneur that I like, and from a founder's perspective, between him and Chuck, I think it's like these are the most passionate CEOs that I know, and they very mission driven and action oriented. And the other one is Raheem Fazal of SV Academy.
Mm.
Um, I got a chance to like know Raheem because they were a portfolio company of one of the general partners that we invested in Rethink Education, and I met him at an event in New York, and we quickly hit it off, and we became a close friend. I ended up uh, I got a chance to make the investment in this company. So Raheem's company, if you think about um, like the upskilling platforms that are out in the market, like or boot camps. So you have a lot of them. Like there's a high concentration in coding and like software engineering or more on the technical side, but there are not a lot of them that are really focused on like sales training. And
Mm.
what SV Academy does. Like they focus on sales training, and the most
That's their
important
niche.
thing, yeah, it's and there it's like tech sales, right? And the most interesting piece, or the piece that really drew me to SV Academy is the student population that they serve.
Mm.
Like mostly underserved population, and they're making a serious difference. And I'm that's one company and founder that I'm super proud of to have backed in the past.
That's amazing, man. We should definitely have them on the show in the future. And, I think what
You
I
should,
love
you should,
about
you should have, you should have, you should have Chuck and Raheem. You will you enjoy the conversation with those two. They're terrific.
yeah, I would love to get your thoughts. What are the characteristics or skills that you've seen that makes a successful founder and entrepreneur?
Honestly, like I'll say grit.
Mm,
Uh, like these guys, they wake up every single morning. They live, breathe their companies,
yeah,
and like they still have a home life, but they're like, I mean, they're pounding the pavement, not only on the fundraising front, like always constantly thinking about how to perform their craft, how to perform
yeah.
their product, and how to properly leverage it. And I'll put a plug in here for like on the impact side. I think like as an impact investor, like a lot of folks will, a lot of questions that you receive from individual asset allocators, that they'll say, hey, like how can you like generate like a tremendous amount of return if you're focused on impact, and sometimes like impact tends to get discounted. My response, and it's I'll say it's indicative of the work that like Chuck and Raheem are doing. If you're doing the impact side right, like it'll generate cash on the revenue side.
Mm,
If you think about it, if
that's
the
true.
if you're impacting students, like the amount of students that you're impacting, if you're growing student population, like it's going to reflect on the revenue side, and it's important to remember that. Like I wouldn't discount impact for no one. You gotta,
Yeah, impact doesn't mean nonprofit.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm like that's not how it works. Like if you're doing it right, like you're going to be able to generate revenue, and
Yeah.
like both can like impact and revenue and returns can coexist. So
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that, man. And I think, impact investing, what people don't realize about it is that there are actually a lot of companies right now who are either startups or enterprises who are seeing the opportunity to get involved in impact investing, whether it be in underrepresented founders, but also in a lot of the systematic issues that we're facing in society right now, whether it be related to, skills gaps in education. And I think that's one of the larger magnitudes that we try to focus on our guide is like how are we helping close that divide between early career employment, high school, and then the enterprise. So I absolutely love that, man. Andre, I would love for you to share a little bit more about if you could build a company right now and solve a problem right now, what are some of the landscapes or problem spaces you'd be really interested in tackling outside of education?
ooh, my goodness.
that's a large question, right?
That's a little question, man. So what my like I mentioned my background earlier, being from Africa. I think there's a serious need and there's serious opportunity in Africa. I think from a workforce development standpoint, and also from an education standpoint. From again, my selfishly, the thesis of my fund, of our fund, is post secondary workforce or education or digital learning to future work. I think if I was to build a company, like it would focus within that lens in terms of like how do you really upskill
Mm,
uh, learners that are in Africa. If you think about like the issues that are facing the learners in Africa, some being remote, some being like rural, like how do you reach them and help to upskill them so you can help provide a better life for them? I think that's the key. If you think about like the if you think about Ghana, like
mm,
if you're thinking through the actual like the president of Ghana, you hear him mention that he's focused on the youth and how to upskill him. And I think that's a serious issue. I think you can focus on you, but there are also adult learners that you can focus on. So building a company that's focused on upskilling like learners from youth to adult, I think is something that I'll seriously consider. Not that I'll do it because I love. people that are a lot smarter in terms of building companies than I am. Uh, uh, but but uh, but again, like thinking through like the needs of a nation,
Mm.
because I think like Africa has like if you're to penetrate Africa, like you need to customize your solution to like different nations because they have different needs.
It's so
So
fragmented. And I
exactly, exactly. So if you're approaching Africa and like thinking through um, like the different needs that are existing at the state level or the country level, and customizing the solution really upskill the learner in terms of like the actual like key industries that are within those countries. That is something that could be seriously powerful, and most important, like you're upskilling the folks that don't have access to education. So you get them upskill, and then you plug them into jobs. Like I think that would be a game changer.
That's powerful, man. So that's a huge idea for someone that's watching, tuning into this, or is going to be listening to the recording later. That's a product idea. You might want to push that to Andre. Andre, man, it was lovely having you on the show, man.
My pleasure.
Where can the people follow more of your work and learn more about the things that you're doing, man?
Excuse me.
Where can people follow you and learn more about the
Oh,
things that you're doing?
yeah, I'll say ping me on the like ping me on LinkedIn. Like follow what we're doing at NewU Venture Partners. We're pretty excited about the space. Like we think the time for there's a paper that came out like back in I think like 2013. In fact, I was on the phone with the author this morning. It's called "The Avalanche is Coming." It was about how higher ed would be disrupted. The paper, I think it calls for like the disruption happening like 10 years from when it was written. So like essentially like 2023. Guess
Wow,
what? That disruption is happening now,
2020.
right? so it's one of those things. I mean, like this is a time to really affect change at the post secondary level, and most importantly, affect change when it comes to future work. Because a lot of the traditional way of thinking is being disrupted, and a lot of things, a lot of discussion around workforce will be centered around like skills based
Mm.
instead of like what has been previously. So we're we want to say that we're pretty involved in in those discussions, like given like the thesis of our fund, but also like given like our relationship with Western Governors University. So, and I'll say they're at the forefront of that fight. So.
Very true. Very true. With that said, Andre, thank you so much. It was truly an honor having you on the Unleashing the Future of Work A Guide live podcast. Man, we got to have you on for a future episode, brother.
You let me know. I got you. I got you. As they say in Niger, anything for my man, for my Oga, Tim Salah.
Appreciate you so much, brother. Please, man, be well. Talk to you soon.
We'll see you, man. Take care.
Right,
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. That was the first part of today's two-part episode. We're definitely going to be back soon with another lovely guest in the L&D space. You don't want to miss who we have coming on. So definitely make sure you stay tuned. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then I'm going to come back on with our amazing guest. All right, talk soon. Welcome back to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide podcast live. Today, I am so excited for the person I am about to announce next on this special two-part episode. Keith is a workforce futurist, Mr. Keith Keating, and a super active LinkedIn influencer and evangelist of the future of work. And today, we're just going to be talking about everything related to L&D, right? What the future of work looks like, the shift that we're seeing to remote work, and really getting some of his tactical thoughts on what organizations can do to adapt to this future. Please, if you're tuning in and you're going to love this episode, share it with your network. Make sure you comment, ask Keith questions or I questions, and more importantly, make sure this information gets out of there. So with that said, I'm excited to really dive deep with Keith because he has a design thinking background similar to I. And, I think we're going to really go deep on what are some of the practical things leaders within organizations can do to actually build a future-proof workforce. With that said, let me bring on Keith to the show. Keith, how's it going, man?
Good afternoon. Good morning. Wherever in the world everyone is joining from. It's good to see you live.
All right. Where are you tuning in from, man?
I'm in Detroit, Michigan today.
Wow.
Yeah, I live here part-time between multiple places, but I'm here a lot for work. So this is my second location.
Wow, that's amazing. So how long have you been living in Detroit, man?
4 years.
4 years. Wow. So what brought you to Detroit?
General Motors.
Oh.
So GM is my main client right now that I focus on from a L&D perspective, design thinking perspective. So I love them enough, and they loved me enough to have me move here from Hong Kong, of all places.
That is crazy, Hong Kong. And while you were there, were you also working in L&D as well?
Yep. For HSBC, I ran training and development for Asia. So it's a big transition to move from Hong Kong to Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. So I would love for you to share a little bit more with us, about your background and how long you've been in the L&D space and, been leading the future of work as a workforce futurist.
Absolutely. So I've got about 20 years experience. I started when I was 5. So I have played every role in learning and development, from being a trainer, facilitator, which is still one of my favorite functions, to organizational development, change management, instructional design. And for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been focusing on global learning strategies. So I've had the opportunity to grow up all around the world and have a really multicultural, diverse background. And so it's really continuously drawn me to this concept of globalization and how do we act as global organizations, even when our headquarters may be in the US. What I find predominantly is US-centric headquarters often don't equate to a global workforce or global, at least, mindset. So that's really what kind of led me down that path. And I would say in terms of workforce futurism, it's a term that everybody's gravitating to, and I hate to kind of throw myself into that group. I've been a fan of yours for several years now, once I was introduced to you. And for me, it's the reason I got interested was there was a headline about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was 800 million people are going to lose their jobs within the next 13 years.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, it was shocking to me and alarming. And I thought, well, this is scary. What does this mean? And as a learning and development professional, how can I help people? And so that was my first entrance to kind of this concept of what's the future of work look like? And is it really as dark and gloomy as these types of headlines say? And so that turned me on to it. Really, my passion is around helping empower, encourage, and enable people to take control over their future. Because we can't rely on corporations. We can't rely on the government. I don't believe we can rely on higher education. We have to be our own advocates for our future, whatever it is. And so we have to take control over that. So individuals like you and me, we need to empower people to figure out, how do they actually do this? What does that mean to be prepared for the future of work?
Yeah, no, and I think it's so powerful that you're mentioning that, because I think a lot of people still have the traditional mindset of that you have to rely on your corporation, and there's not ways for you to create that flexibility in your life and career, or second source of income, all of that thing. And I think there's a big mindset shift, right? When we talk about, what are some of the ways that you think leaders within organizations can start cultivating, this mindset that you and I already have?
I would say the first is lifelong learners.
In that, make that part of your culture. We have to embed learning as part of the culture and stop thinking about learning as an event that happens someplace else, where you're stopping your flow of work, you're going into a classroom, you're taking a web-based training on the LMS. That's taking you out of your environment, and it's making it this outside activity. It needs to be constant. And the truth is that it is constant. We're not necessarily aware of it. I mean, every time your mobile device, whether it's Samsung, iPhone, whatever it is, there's a new update, there's some learning that's going on right there. You're having to figure out what's just changed. How do I relearn how to do this? And so that's a very minor example, but I think from a leadership perspective, it's embracing lifelong culture. It's creating opportunities for our talent to be learning at work. So not just forcing them to do this outside of work. For example, I host a book club at General Motors, and we give our teams opportunities to read during their work hours. We're not going to force them to do your work for 8, 9, 10 hours a day and then go home and then read and then come back and talk about it. So giving employees opportunities like that. I think it's also important to embrace this mindset that goes along with lifelong learning of learning, unlearning, and relearning. And the concept of
I think it's a powerful framework. Learning, unlearning, and relearning.
Absolutely. So when we think about learning in general, I would say our parents' generation was more of, you go to university or you study your skill or your trade. So you're going up and you're learning, and then you're applying it. And you apply it and you stay with that company until you retire. That mindset no longer exists. Now it's, we go and we learn something, we have to unlearn it. Then it's time to relearn something else, and we unlearn it and we relearn. And that type of mindset helps us be agile, adaptable, and it helps us fill that next organizational gap. And the reality is, for me, that's what I want everyone, not just the people in my organization, but everyone to recognize, is that we truly don't know what the future holds. We have no idea. We don't know how many jobs are going to be created. We don't know what type of jobs are even going to exist in the future. If you just think back 10 years ago, we're now seeing social media, massive influx of jobs, professional video game players. You can be a video analyzer on YouTube. None of those jobs existed when I was a kid on that list of what you want to be when you grow up. And so now they've got all these cool jobs that we never knew were around. In 10 years, the same thing is going to happen. So the point is, we don't necessarily know what it's going to be like in the future, but we do know that we can prepare for it. And we can prepare by being agile, adaptable, and we can learn, unlearn, relearn. And to do all of that, you have to be a lifelong learner. Learning doesn't just stop when you graduate college or you get that next certificate. It's got to be continuous.
It's so funny you're sharing this, because for me, it's always been my mindset that if you want to thrive, you always have to be learning, right? Like, that's my motto, and that's a motto that we really carry forward with the guide. For you, what are some of the practical things that you think you can share with leaders and organizations so that they can cultivate that always be learning mindset and create that lifelong learning thread and framework that you just provide?
I think one thing is our social campaigns around it. It is valuable
for our leaders to be promoting this, but I find that it's even more valuable for my colleagues to be promoting this. I'll give you an example. At Citigroup, there was a campaign called #BeMore. And it was all about how we can be more, we can be better. And I love that because it was, again, not top down. It was colleagues sharing stories about what they've done in that last month to learn something new, how it's created them to be a better person, both personally and professionally. And I think that the other thing that's important for us to stop segregating is this focus on just learning at work, for work. we tend to focus on what are the skills that our organization needs rather than what are the skills that Tim needs? What are the skills that Keith needs? What are my passions that I can continue to help grow and thrive on, but also combine that with work? And what I find is, and I'm a proponent of this too, when we think about the organization, we tend to focus on the skill gaps within the organization. And instead of finding the skills where our individuals thrive, we tend to find what skills are you already doing? What skills are already in that job set? What skills do I, the organization, need? And how can I get you to learn those skills to serve me better, the organization, rather than to help our talent thrive? And I think part of that is that organizations fear, well, what if I create this environment and my teams recognize this isn't the place they want to be in, or this isn't the job that they want to be in? That's great. I believe that that's great. Let's give them that opportunity and exposure to learn about themselves, because the more that you know yourself, the more that you know what your uniqueness is, what your skill sets are, the better employee you're going to be, the better individual that you're going to be, and the more you can thrive.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful, man. Actually involving the people. Let's talk about the skills, right, that are necessary. One of the things that you often share on LinkedIn is the fact that we're moving towards a more human-centric world, right, where creativity, empathy, and adaptability are more crucial. Why is that from your point of view?
So in my opinion, all companies exist based on their employees. Employees, what do you have? Some people say, well, yeah, but
look at Uber or Airbnb. They're based on a platform. Well, first of all, people created the platform, and second of all, it's people behind the platform that keep the business running. So you take away the people, what do you have left? In my opinion, it's nothing. And so people are the most important aspect, I think, of any business. I understand that businesses are in the business of making money, but you can't without your people there. And so for me right now, what I like to tell executives I'm working with, the CEO should stand for Chief Empathy Officer. That's what our CEOs right now should be focusing on. And we see a lot of great examples of those and a lot of bad examples of those, especially with what COVID, the transition that we have right now with COVID and the significant loss of work and how different leaders are handling those situations. And so that's really given some examples of companies that are thriving in terms of this downward spiral temporarily and how they handle their employees. So to answer your question, the first is empathy, Chief Empathy Officer, because our businesses are founded and run by people.
Yeah.
I would say next is problem solving. So I go back to the top 5 skill sets, which is empathy, creativity, problem solving, interpersonal skills, and I'm missing the 5th one.
Adaptability, man.
Adaptability, agility, creativity, all of those. And the reason is those are our higher order cognitive skills. Those are the skills that we do better than technology. And so that's part of the challenge that I find that people have is there are some that are gravitating towards being angry at technology, automation, robotics. Our jobs are being stolen, they're being taken away. The truth is there are a significant amount of tasks that technology does better. So let's let it do that because it complements us, it augments us, and it allows us to focus on what we do best. And what we do best is that creativity, that empathy, that problem solving, the adaptability, agility. That's what we should be focusing on. So going back to your question, that's why I believe that those are important skill sets to focus on, because that's what separates us from artificial intelligence.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. And, I think it's the strategic thinking. That's where we shine as human beings, being able to actually see and recognize patterns. In what you mentioned too, Keith, right, about some of the leaders who are really adapting post COVID-19 or while during COVID-19. Brian Chesky was one of the leaders. I was like, oh, this is really great what he's doing to pivot Airbnb to better support hosts. But also, when they were going through the layoffs, one of the things that Airbnb did is they actually allowed the people that were leaving Airbnb to keep their computers. So it could be easy for them to find opportunities beyond Airbnb. And they actually set up a talent manager platform or talent management or recruiting platform so other people can actually find talent that was former Airbnb, workers. And I thought, to your point, those are the things that leaders can do to show empathy during tough times like this.
Absolutely. And I think that I'll do the flip side of that. I think that Uber still has a long way to go in terms of being empathetic. I saw firsthand the situation a couple of weeks ago where they laid off 3,500 people in a 3-minute Zoom call. I mean, just talk about the lack of empathy there, the lack of personalization, the lack of helping to prepare them for the future. And, for me, what I like to focus on is the concept of second skilling. And so second skilling is creating these new skills for us while we still have our jobs today. And I think that a lot of organizations could do better at this, because if we wait till they're laid off, if we wait till they're on the path of redundancy, or we wait till they're so filled with fear about the future of their job, they're not open to learning something new. So we have an opportunity as leaders within organizations to create this second skilling now before we get to that phase. It is great that they are helping, and COVID is a bit of an anomaly, obviously. None of us could prepare for COVID.
No one.
Right. If futurists were really good at our jobs, we would have known it coming. Bill Gates knew. There were a few people that knew.
Yeah.
When we look at industries where there's going to be a decline, retail sales workers, logistics managers, warehouse managers, truck drivers, we already know today that those jobs are going to continue to dwindle in the near future because of automation technology. So we should be proactively working with those industries to try and help those individuals prepare now for that so that they can second skill. I don't think that we're doing enough of that. In fact, it's a conversation I'm starting to have in the L&D space, because we're creating this almost this confirmation bias, or we're creating this echo chamber. Like the conversation you and I are having today, I have all the time within my L&D network. But we're the ones that need this conversation. Our jobs are pretty secure, or at least we're agile enough to figure out what's our next move. It is these other industries, again, retail sales workers, the trucking industry, warehouse manufacturers. Those people aren't in my network. And so I'm trying to figure out how do I get to them to share this information with them about second skilling, about all of this, so that they can start to prepare now.
Yeah. I think I would love for you to touch on, whose responsibility should it be for skilling and, providing workers with the secondary skills, as you mentioned?
It's a difficult question. I think that it's a shared responsibility. So if we break it down, we have private sector, we have public sector, and we have government. Then we have the individuals themselves. I think that everybody plays a part in it. And I don't want to get political. I think there are some countries that do this really well. Singapore does this phenomenally. Lots of Europe does this really well. I think that United States, we have a long way to go to be protecting our workers, to be giving them access to these skills. I think there are a number of organizations, Microsoft, Amazon, General, drawing a blank.
General Assembly? Is that what you think?
Yeah, thank you. Yep. General Assembly that does a great job with creating programs. So we could do better. So the answer to your question is, I think everybody plays a role in it, but in my opinion, it's up to the individual. I am not expecting my organization to prepare me for the future. I don't expect the government to do it. I don't expect my next job to do it. I believe that it's my responsibility as a lifelong learner that I should be finding my uniqueness, my skill set. And I think that there's enough tools out there. There's enough free tools out there. edX is a phenomenal resource, edx.org, to learn new skill sets. I was just teaching myself about Bitcoins and blockchain a few weeks ago. So it's a really great way to just start learning new terms, new phrases, new different types of technologies. So it's a shared responsibility. At the end of the day, it's up to us. It's up to people like you and I to continue to advocate for this.
Yeah. And, I think what I love about what you're saying too is this importance of self-directed learning, right? Everything that as a workforce futurist and as an L&D professional, you have to learn it. You have to really adopt that mindset. And, one of the organizations that has really advocated for the growth mindset And I think it also pairs up with always be learning mindset. Is Microsoft and Satya Nadella, when he came into leadership, that was one of the first things he instituted. Like, there's a mindset that everyone is always learning, because really, as an organization, if you if you get high on your own supply and you don't think there's room for growth, you start losing now. Even that institutional knowledge that has made you that successful organization, you start losing out on how to adapt to market circumstances, right? Because you're not learning anymore. And so I love what you're saying about, the always be learning mindset, and I want to ask you, when you think about the future of learning, right, as an L&D professional, where do you see it going from being self-directed? What else do you see kind of coming up in the pike from your perspective, Keith?
I think it's a lot more personalized. It's a lot more learning in that flow of work, in that moment of need. So again, going back to that idea, we need to break down the walls where learning happens outside.
Learning is someplace else. Learning is something I have to go to whereas learning is just part of my environment, whether it be through my mobile device, through books, through discussions like
VR, AR, all of these things.
Yep. And I think that, going back to your earlier point, when we think we know everything, we can't possibly learn.
Yeah.
And so, our mind is just closed off, because why? I don't need to learn. I already know everything. And so it's a mindset. It's a shift of the mindset that we have to be focusing on. And really, being content is a mindset that puts us at risk. I know a lot of people that feel like, well, I'm at this stage of my career, I don't need to keep learning. And that mindset puts them at risk, because the only thing that we know for sure is change. And the speed at which change is happening is accelerating faster than ever. And so what we know is that our organizations are continuing to change and to evolve. We change, we evolve. L&D also needs to change and evolve. And so going back to your question, today, learning and development as a practice, we're known as the providers of learning.
Yeah.
Some have even called us the owners of learning. I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to be known as the owner of your learning.
Yeah.
For me, the next stage of the L&D industry is enabling, encouraging, and empowering the learners to take control over their future. We need to continue evolving from being content creators to content curators, because more often than not, the content already exists. We've got to stop trying to put a new label on it or come up with a new frame or new methodology and get our stamp on it and sell it. Rather, let's find what already exists. Maybe we localize it. In fact, the model that we tend to follow is you borrow, bend, buy, and then you build. Build last, because we can probably find it out there and localize it and make it our own. So we just need to evolve along with the needs of our learners. And that's what I don't think that we do quick enough.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful. So learning in the flow of work and really evolving over time with the needs of the learners within your organization.
Absolutely. I mean, it's logical. If you think about how everything evolves, I don't think that our industry evolves fast enough. And part of that is, I think, the lack of rigor. And this is, and I'm not, what I'm about to say is not a disservice to any instructional designer, but you don't need to have a degree to be an instructional designer. Not that you need a degree, but you don't need to have certifications. You don't need to have any type, there's no quality check. And that's the same with a lot of industries. Anybody can call themselves a workforce futurist. Doesn't mean that they're doing any of the research behind it. Doesn't mean that they've actually applied it, that they've gone past the theory into the application. And that's what I find a lot in the L&D space is in many organizations, it's a dumping ground. It's where people end up, not necessarily where people desire to be or do the research. And so, someone said it to me recently, just because you could run a marathon 10 years ago doesn't still make you a marathon runner. So it's true. So the question to me was, what are you doing? What are we doing as an industry to continuously evolve, continuously grow and challenge ourselves? And that's where design thinking comes in.
Talk to us about that, man.
Yeah, when I first was introduced to it about 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't a really great story. Someone came to me and said, I think you should go learn design thinking. I said, okay. So I went to MIT, uncovered what it was, and just had this massive aha, insightful moment. And just as simple as I've never been putting the learners first.
Mm.
When my business comes to me with an order for me to execute, I go into my toolbox in my brain and I pull out what I think is appropriate, rather than being a trusted advisor, rather than being a consultant and stepping back and asking, what do the learners need? Is this truly a learning and development solution, or is there another business problem going on and you're just trying to pawn it off on L&D, which happens quite often? And so the framework of design thinking, and just in case viewers aren't familiar, design thinking is a 5-step methodology for creative problem solving. Empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And the reality is design thinking is all about the end user.
Yeah.
The learner, your customer, your student, whoever it is. And so in my case, I use it for L&D, for our learners. It's heavily known for its product derivatives from Apple, from IDEO, from the D School at Stanford. So for me, the aha moment was, I'm not putting my learners first. I'm not taking a step back to understand the problem, understand
What's the experience
they need.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like really thinking through the experience, I think, you know, and it's I love how you were able to find out the kind of the cross section overlap between design thinking and L&D, because it's all an experience, right? How learners learn and what are their best habits and their best forms of learning, their best modes.
Yeah, and there's so many opportunities for design thinking in every industry. So basically, if you have humans, if you're dealing with humans, design thinking may be a tool for you to use if you're trying to understand them. You know, the way that I describe it is the difference between a mystery and a puzzle. A puzzle, you have all the pieces right there. You kind of already have even the solution. You just have to put the pieces in the right place to get that. A mystery, you don't know. You don't know what it is. You're going along with the journey. You're trying to understand the situation, understand the players, and figure out what's the actual story that's going on here. What am I actually trying to solve for? And that's where design thinking comes in, is when you have those types of problems, or even just it's a challenge. It doesn't have to be a problem. And it's a mystery. Design thinking is applicable. Where it's evolved for me lately is around continuous improvement. Design thinking is a phenomenal tool for continuous improvement because it's a mystery in the sense of how can we be better, or could we be better? And that's how we're using it at General Motors. Is when I joined it 4 years ago with our team, the Center of Learning, the question was, how are we doing as a learning organization? And the answer was, we're doing great. All of our surveys are good. All the feedback on the trainers is great. It's okay, great. Could we be better? Well, what do you mean, could we be better? I mean, all of our surveys are great. Everyone's telling us we're great. That's good. But could we be even better? Is there something else that our learners need that we don't know about? Maybe we're not asking the right questions on the surveys. Maybe we've got our bias goggles on and we're only looking at whatever we're just delivering right now rather than the broader picture. And so eventually the team caught on. They recognized the value, and we did do a design thinking initiative, and we uncovered a massive gap. What we uncovered was that we had only been focusing on teaching them the product knowledge for the vehicles they're selling. So teaching them the cab size, the engine, the vehicle modifications. We were never teaching them how to sell. The power skills, listening, empathy, negotiation, how to sell yourself as a business, how to sell a vehicle. And so the aha moment was dealerships assumed that we were teaching that, and we assumed that dealerships were teaching that. So it was the biggest gap. And so we were able to uncover that and immediately close that gap. We've got a really great sales program. It's called Sales Professional Series. Teaches them all the power skills behind selling. We've got great stats and data around how sales have increased as a result of this. And so had we just stopped with the mindset of our surveys say we're great, the verbal feedback says we're great, we would not have uncovered this other opportunity to make things even better. So my recommendation to everyone is just when you are happy, when things are going good and you think everything is great, ask yourself, could it be even better? And consider design thinking as a tool to use to help uncover that.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful. Keith, man, you are a killer workforce futurist. You know, I would love for you to share a little bit about some of the projects you're currently working on with our amazing community.
Absolutely. So doing a lot of podcasts like you, learning from you, Doing a lot of publishing. I like to share the messages. Right now I'm a big proponent of evolving past future-proof.
Wow.
And I'm going to call you out because you said it at the beginning of it. And I've been using it as well. And I had a moment recently where I was thinking about what is that saying? If I tell somebody I have the secret sauce to help you future-proof your career, is that legitimate? And can I actually do that? And the answer was no. I can't future-proof you, but I can future prepare you. And I think that's a big distinction between the two words. And I'm thinking about COVID, and I think, anything I tell people today, the 30% of the country that's now unemployed, let's say 6 months ago, we were talking about future-proofing. Well, there's no way we could have future-proofed for this.
Yeah.
The same in 10 years, we can't future-proof for that. But we can give them the agile, adaptability, resilience, all these skill sets and tools that they need to be prepared for situations like this so that they know how to navigate it.
That's amazing. So you're creating kind of a framework around future preparing people to survive no matter what happens in their career.
Absolutely. And then I think the other piece right now that I'm really focusing on is critical thinking. As it gets near election time, again, I won't get political, but it's important. I just launched a podcast called The Lost Art of Critical Thinking. It is such a powerful skill set that we're not focusing enough on. And in my research, what I uncovered is there was a study done about 2 years ago through Twitter. And it was, they had, the researchers created a tweet with the title of an article. And in the body of the article was just lorem ipsum. It was all the letters, no actual sentences, nothing. And so they published it to see how many people would retweet it. And it had over 60,000 retweets of an article that actually had no content in it. And so it just helps to illustrate and uncover that we've got this confirmation bias. We have this echo chamber that we're now in the habit where we live in a world of 140 characters. And everything is based on that headline. We don't even bother to read what the actual subject is. We see something that is familiar to us. It's our belief, and we forward it. We just say, yep, I believe in that, and it goes on, without even truly taking a step back to think, what does it actually mean? Where did they get that data from? Is truthful? Because we're relying too much on the fact that something is published and making it truth when it's actually not. We've got to be critical thinkers. We've got to be advocates for the information that's out there.
Yeah, and I think in doing that, you're preventing polarization, because I think one of the things that we're really struggling with as a society right now is that everything's oversensitized and everything's over polarized. So you always have this distinction and this battle, when really when you empower people with information from a neutral standpoint, you challenge them to make their own conviction, their own choices, their critically think, you'll start to see a different society. You'll start to see different mindsets, and more importantly, people who can have mature conversations about their perspective.
Yeah, so there's a quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald.
And he says that first-rate intelligence is defined as being able to hold two opposing ideas in your brain at the same time and still being able to function. And I don't think that we have enough first-rate intelligence right now in this country. It's, to your point, it's polarized. It's yes or no. It's binary. It's my way or no way. Rather than just listening, let me hear you. I don't have to agree with you, but I can at least take that thought in. I can sit with it, I can explore it and determine how I feel about it, but I can give you your space to have your thoughts, and I can have space to have my thoughts. And that's just lost right now. And it hurts to see what's happening in the country, regardless whether you're right or you're left. They're both way off in their corners, and we've got to start bringing people closer together to practice first-rate intelligence.
That's powerful, Keith. Keith, man, where can the people follow more of your work and the amazing things that you're doing?
LinkedIn, highly active on LinkedIn. So feel free to check that out. Otherwise, my website, keithkeating.com.
Dude, Keith, thank you so much for being on the show today. We definitely need to have you on for a future episode, man. You're amazing.
Absolutely. I'd love to. I love chatting with you. Love watching your work.
Thanks so much, Keith. Talk to you soon, my friend.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Unleashing the Future of Work. We were fortunate enough to have Andre and Keith on to share a little bit more about their background and their passion for education and L&D. If you love today's episode, please make sure you share with your network. It's going to be on Spotify immediately as soon as I'm done recording this right now. And if you're interested in being a part of Guide's early beta program, definitely check us out at guideapp.co. With that said, I hope you're staying safe, healthy, and abundant, and I will be talking to you soon. Peace.